Okay, I need to get this off my chest because honestly, I can't believe this happened. I still can't wrap my head around it. So here's the story. My sister stole my wedding dress. Yeah, you read that right. She literally took the dress I had picked out for my wedding. And what did I do? Well, let's just say I didn't let her get away with it. I gave her a wedding dress, just not the one she was expecting. Let me give you some background here. I've always been the good sister. Growing up, I was the one who helped her with homework, gave her my clothes, even when I didn't want to, and always tried to be supportive. She was my little sister. I thought that was what family was all about. I didn't mind putting her first, but as we got older, I started noticing that I was always the one giving, and she was always taking. And I just accepted it. I thought, hey, that's just what older siblings do. Fast forward a bit to when I got engaged to my fiancé, Tom. We had been dating for 5 years, and I was beyond excited to start planning the wedding. Like any bride, I had a clear vision of what I wanted, and it included the dress. This wasn't just any dress. It was the one I dreamed about for years. I had seen it at a boutique a while ago, and the moment I tried it on, I knew it was the one. I couldn't wait to walk down the aisle in it, feeling like a queen. It was perfect. Now here's where things got weird. My sister Emma had been acting a little strange ever since we started planning the wedding. She'd ask all sorts of questions about my dress, my bridesmaids, the guest list. At first I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just excited, right? I mean, who wouldn't be excited for their sister's wedding? But then I went for my final fitting. I was so pumped. I had been counting down the days. The moment I arrived at the boutique, the lady behind the counter looked at me a little confused and said, "Your dress was picked up earlier today." I was like, "What? I'm here for it now." She looked at me still confused and said, "Oh, your sister came in and took it. She said you sent her for it." I was frozen. My heart just dropped into my stomach. I couldn't even speak. My sister took my dress? Without asking? Without even telling me? I had to take a minute to process. She knew how important this dress was to me, and she knew how hard I had worked to get it. I called her right away. She answered after one ring, and I said, "Emma, what the hell? You took my dress?" She just laughed it off like it was no big deal, like it wasn't a huge betrayal. She told me, "I thought I'd save you the trip and grab it for you." Save me the trip? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And that's when I realized Emma had crossed a line, and I wasn't just going to let her get away with it. Looking back, I should have seen the signs long before the wedding dress incident. It wasn't just the dress, it was a pattern that had been building for years. Emma had always been the type to get away with things. And I had always been the one to let it slide. Growing up, I was the responsible one. I helped her when she needed it, whether it was with schoolwork or babysitting her friends when my parents weren't around. I was the one who always made sure she was taken care of. Sure, we had our typical sibling spats, but it was mostly small stuff. Nothing that could have prepared me for the kind of betrayal I was about to face. As we entered our teenage years, I noticed a shift. It started with small things. Emma would borrow my clothes and never return them, sometimes even taking the ones I love most. She'd borrow my favorite sweater, only to come home and find it lost somewhere. I'd ask about it, and she'd act as if she didn't even remember what I was talking about. At first, I figured I was being too sensitive. I'd let it go, thinking it wasn't a big deal. But then it got worse. She started taking my things that weren't just clothes, like my makeup, my jewelry, even my books. She'd take them without asking, and when I'd get upset, she'd just shrug it off. "I didn't think you'd mind," she'd say, or, "It's not like you were using it anyway." I found myself constantly frustrated, but I was the bigger person, right? I just brushed it off, telling myself it was no big deal. After all, she was my sister. Fast forward to when I met Tom. Our relationship was serious from the start, and it wasn't long before we got engaged. I thought Emma would be thrilled. I mean, what's not to be happy about, right? I was getting married. But instead, she started acting strangely. It wasn't jealousy at first. I thought it was just her being Emma. She'd send me texts asking what the wedding colors were, what kind of flowers I was thinking of, and oddly, what dress I was wearing, you know? I'd tell her it's a surprise because I wanted the dress to be special for me, but she didn't stop. She kept asking, even casually dropping hints that she wanted to see it. I chalked it up to her being excited. After all, we were close. She was my sister and I thought she had my back. But now, looking back, I realize I was blind to her intentions. She wasn't excited about my wedding at all. She was more interested in my dress than the actual wedding itself. Then came the day when I picked out the dress, the one I had been dreaming of for years. It was perfect, and I felt beautiful in it. I couldn't wait to wear it on my wedding day. I told Emma all about it, and she acted so excited. But now, I'm certain she wasn't excited for me. She was just sizing up her next move. When I went for my final fitting, I had no idea what was coming. The boutique called me and told me that my dress had been picked up. They said Emma had come in to get it, saying I sent her. I was in shock. I thought maybe they were mistaken, but when I called Emma, she just laughed it off like it was nothing. That was the moment I realized how much Emma had taken from me over the years and how little she cared about my feelings. When I hung up the phone with Emma that day, I was absolutely livid. She had crossed a line and I couldn't just let it go this time. For years, I had let her walk all over me, but this time, this was my wedding, and that dress was mine. I spent weeks thinking about how to handle the situation. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what exactly yet. All I knew was that this was the moment I was going to get my power back. For the first few days, I thought about confronting her directly. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her how betrayed I felt. But then I stopped. I realized something. I wanted to take control of the situation, not let her see how much she'd hurt me. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply this had affected me. She'd been taking things from me for years, and I was done being the one who just accepted it. Instead of going in guns blazing, I decided to do something far more satisfying. I started researching. I called the boutique to confirm that the dress Emma had picked up wasn't already gone or altered. Fortunately, it wasn't. The woman at the boutique seemed a bit confused, but told me they had kept it exactly as it was when I last tried it on. She even told me it was still in the back room. That gave me an idea. I started visiting local bridal shops, looking for similar dresses, ones that could pass for the same gown. I wasn't looking for a cheap knockoff, though. I wanted something that looked just as beautiful but could be altered easily. I wanted it to look perfect. I wasn't just replacing my dress, I was setting Emma up for a huge surprise. Meanwhile, Emma was oblivious. She kept sending me these sweet, condescending messages about how she was just looking out for me by picking up the dress, all the while acting like nothing was wrong. She mentioned how excited she was about the wedding, about how I was going to look amazing. I would just smile and play along. I wanted her to think I had forgiven her, that I was too busy with other things to care about the dress anymore. But the truth was, I was planning. Then came the day when I found the dress. It was nearly identical to the one I had originally picked. The material, the design, even the color, everything matched perfectly. I bought it immediately, and then, with the help of a trusted that I had it altered to fit my exact measurements. I even added a few touches that would make it stand out, small details that would make the dress look unique, but only in a way that would make Emma feel like she had missed out on something special. I was ready. The day I picked up the altered dress, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, but there was still one more step. Getting it into Emma's hands, and that's where the fun was going to begin. I called her later that week. I told her I had an emergency and needed her help with something at the wedding venue. I played it cool, told her that I had a small issue with the venue decorations, and asked if she could come by to check it out. Of course, she said yes, thrilled that I had asked for her help. I could almost hear her excitement through the phone. What she didn't know was that I had one last surprise waiting for her. The day of the wedding was drawing closer, and I could feel the tension building inside me. I had been playing the part of the forgiving sister, smiling at Emma, acting as if nothing was wrong. But deep down, I was just waiting for the perfect moment. And it came sooner than I expected. The night before my wedding, I invited Emma to the venue under the guise of needing her help with some last-minute details. She was eager to get involved, of course. I had already arranged everything with the venue. But this was the perfect setup. I told her I needed to show her something in one of the back rooms, an area she hadn't seen before. When she walked into the room, I could barely contain my excitement. There it was, the fake dress, the one I had altered to perfection. It was hanging in front of a full-length mirror, looking exactly like the dress she had stolen from me. But it wasn't my dress, it was a replica, and in some ways, it was even more beautiful than the original. I could see her eyes light up as she saw it hanging there, her jealousy and desire already starting to show. I casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, I had the dress delivered here earlier today just to make sure it was safe and sound. You know, after everything that happened." Emma was so distracted by the dress she didn't even notice the subtle dig. "Wait, what?" she said, turning to me. "You mean this is the dress?" She took a step closer, inspecting it with a grin that screamed, "I won." I nodded, keeping my cool. "Yeah, I thought you'd like to see it one last time before tomorrow. You know, before I wear it down the aisle. It's pretty close to the one you picked up, don't you think?" She smiled, her excitement growing. "It looks perfect. I'm sure it's going to look even better on you. You're going to be a gorgeous bride." I couldn't help but chuckle under my breath. She still had no idea what was about to happen. I could see the smugness on her face, the same smugness I'd seen so many times before. It was clear she thought she'd gotten away with everything, but the moment she slipped into that dress was going to be the moment she realized how wrong she was. I casually mentioned, "I'm sure you'd love to try it on, wouldn't you? I mean, it's practically the same as the one you picked up for me, right?" She immediately nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Of course, why not? It's going to be fun to see it on me." She didn't hesitate for a second, and that was her biggest mistake. I handed her the dress and pointed her to the small changing room in the back of the venue. She took it from me with a grin, like she was about to claim her victory. But here's the thing, I didn't just want to expose her in front of me. I wanted the entire wedding party to see what kind of person she truly was. I had already set everything up. As Emma entered the changing room, I quietly signaled for a few of my bridesmaids to gather near the door. They were in on the plan, and they knew what was coming. I waited in silence as the anticipation built up. When Emma finally stepped out of the changing room, she was glowing with confidence. Sure, she was about to stun me with the dress she thought was mine. She stepped into the room, twirling around with a proud smile plastered on her face. But as soon as she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror, her smile faltered. The dress fit her, but it didn't fit in the way she thought it would. The hemline, which had been altered to give it a unique look, didn't sit right. The fabric, although beautiful, shimmered in a strange way, and something was clearly off. She turned to me, her face now flushed with confusion and panic. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Doesn't it look great?" She turned to the bridesmaids who were watching from the corner of the room, and that's when it clicked for her. The dress wasn't the one she had picked up. It wasn't even close. The alterations, the small changes I'd made, were all too obvious now. And the best part? She realized it too late. You switched it?" she stammered, her voice shaking. I nodded, watching the panic spread across her face. "I didn't switch it. I just made sure you got what you deserved." Her face turned bright red as she realized she had been caught. Not just in front of me, but in front of everyone who mattered. She had stolen my wedding dress, thinking I wouldn't fight back, thinking I was weak. But I wasn't. I was strong. And I had taken back control of the situation in the most satisfying way. The bridesmaids stood there, silent but supportive. They had witnessed it all, how Emma had tried to steal my moment and how I had planned every detail to bring her down. I could feel a sense of power, a sense of victory that was more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. Emma was standing there, helpless, realizing she had lost everything in an instant. And me? I was ready for my wedding, ready to walk down that aisle in the dress I had chosen for myself, my real dress. The one that symbolized everything I had worked for. Emma wasn't the one who was going to have her moment. I was. After Emma realized what had happened, the room was silent. She stood there, her face pale, her body trembling. I could see the realization sinking in. The dress she had gotten so excited about was nothing like the one I'd picked out. She had planned to wear it as if it were her own victory, but instead, she had been made a fool. I didn't say anything more. I didn't need to. The expression on her face told me everything. The silence was broken when one of my bridesmaids, who had been standing there watching the entire scene unfold, spoke up. "Emma, you really thought you could get away with it?" Emma's eyes darted around, her usual arrogance replaced by a quiet panic. She stuttered, I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I thought you wouldn't care." But I had cared. I cared more than she would ever understand. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about the dress. It was about all the years of taking advantage of my kindness, all the small ways she had crossed the line without me ever calling her out. "I did care, Emma," I said, my voice steady, "but now I'm the one who's in control." She didn't respond. She didn't have to. The truth was clear and everyone in that room could see it. She had spent years thinking that she could take whatever she wanted from me. But now, she had nothing. She didn't get the dress, she didn't get the glory, and worst of all, she was left with the humiliation of realizing that I had outsmarted her in the one area she thought she could win: my wedding. I turned to leave the room, but before I could, Emma grabbed my arm. Her voice was shaking as she begged, "Please, can't we just forget about this? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, Don't," I interrupted. "Don't pretend like you're sorry, you've hurt me enough." Her face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability. But it was too little, too late. She had burned all her bridges, and there was nothing left for her to hold on to. The bridesmaids and I walked out, leaving Emma standing in the back room, clutching the fake dress like a consolation prize. The next morning, on the day of my wedding, Emma showed up at the venue. She looked different, less confident, almost defeated. She tried to apologize again, but this time, I didn't need to hear it. I was walking down the aisle in the dress I had dreamed about, and nothing she said could take that away from me. She left before the ceremony began, and I'm not sure where she went after that, but I didn't care. What mattered was that I was finally free from the grip she had held on me all these years. The wedding went off without a hitch, and Tom and I had the most incredible day of our lives. As for Emma, well, the fallout from her actions spread quickly. The truth came out about the wedding dress incident, and the family was split. Some sided with her, but most saw her for what she truly was: a person who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted, even if it meant betraying family. It didn't take long before the consequences of her actions caught up with her. She lost some close friendships and had a strained relationship with her parents, who couldn't believe she would go so far as to steal from her own sister. As for me, I moved on. I had my wedding, I had my dress, and I had finally learned to stand up for myself. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. A few weeks later, I ran into Emma again. She was quiet, much more humble than I had ever seen her. She tried to apologize once more, but I was done. "You took enough from me, Emma," I said. "I've let you get away with too much. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm done trying to fix what's broken." And that was the last time I saw her. Looking back, I'm proud of how I handled it. I didn't let her walk all over me anymore. I didn't let her have my moment, my wedding, my dress. And in the end, I came out on top. I didn't need her approval, and I certainly didn't need her to take what was mine. The wedding dress was just the start of me taking control of my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again.